Good morning, Grinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka BlenderEd, Blender HD. If you want to follow me on Twitter, and it's Monday, June 20th. And you know what that means on Mondays? It's Mondays with McCool, joined by James McCool, the co-author, with me on the theory of daily fantasy sports. I'm bringing it up right now. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass that you can pick up at theoryofdfs.com. As I see people in the YouTube chat, Daniel Hutchins, Nerdy Tenor, he may like this exercise we'll be doing this morning.
Yeah.
Chris Aarons is here. Good morning. Right, this is a DFS strategy show. Baseball's coming up later today. Right, we got the 8-game slate. They'll be talking about that on Grinders Live later today at 5 o'clock. Crunch Time presented by FanDuel, free all season. Follows that at 6:20. So hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell to know when they go live. I'll probably be playing the single entry contest. I'm getting sick and tired, James, of building 7 million liners for baseball. Being that we'll be working on the new sequel to the 4 Advanced Players Guide with Excel tools for the theory of daily fantasy sports, as well as me doing a lot more data analysis for MMA. I want to get myself ready for NFL. I've decided to maybe I'm not going to be playing 100 plus lineups in MLB. I'll just analyze and go. I'll take my best shot. Maybe I'll make 4 lineups or something. 1 in the 121, 3 in the $88 contest, and not have to worry about getting the nuts every night. Some guy hits a home run. It's like, oh, I'm dead. Right. In large field, that's kind of the way it is, but in small field, maybe not. But yeah, baseball. It's June already, and I'm sick of baseball.
Yeah, I probably have a little bit more pep in my step, I guess, than you do. I love baseball, and I think that my baseball models are probably my favorite tool that I have ever built. So I guess I have a little bit more gutzpah when it comes to baseball. I probably have another month of happily grinding it until I'm just I'm done with this. But that's usually how it goes, right? As soon as we get into around August, I got to tap out because I have NFL that I have to worry about, and we're working into the later stages of esports, and that's when some majors happen for Counter-Strike and League of Legends, and eventually when we get into August, it's all right, I can't keep focusing any energy on actually playing at this point because I got to move on to the next sport. NFL, I should start the NFL offseason stuff this week. I usually try to have that product up by July-ish, just because the beginning of it, NFL, I think that if you focused a lot on NFL up to now, unless you're a hardcore best ball grinder, you didn't really gain that much on the field, right? There's going to be injuries, there's going to be signings, there's going to be trades, there's going to be camp cuts, everything like that. And anything up till now, unless you were doing it in the purpose of trying to leverage the field and best ball stuff, I don't see a reason to work on NFL much earlier than this.
Well, one thing I wanted to work on this morning is getting your mindset in order. I mean, I think June, July, August, kind of, we don't have basketball, you don't have football yet. I think is a good time to use the summer to train your brain to think in terms of probabilities, think in terms of expected value, think in terms of equity. And I wanted to play a realistic game today to describe what happened I'm in the MMA World Championship. Whatever. I qualified, but they're breaking into round. There's 3 rounds in order to get to the 10-person live final. And the week before, we talked about it, that there were 70 entries, and 6 of us played the same exact lineup and tied for 27th. So there were 4 spots to give, but 6 of us tied. So according to Draftkings, they were going to run a tiebreaker with the top 4 out of 6 out of us. And the semblance going into that, the strategically was, well, MMA, cash lineups in MMA are fairly straightforward. I mean, sometimes there are a couple of lineups that are close to one another, right? And it's a matter of which one do you play. So I was in this round, this tiebreaker, knowing that 4 out of 6 pay, and it's quite possible that they maybe line up duplication. So James, let me throw it to you first to think through it, since you weren't in this position. If 4 out of 6 pay, should you be more or less inclined to play a lineup that is duplicated in the contest?
More inclined.
And why would that be?
Because in order to cash that contest, you're basically trying to force the onus of winning onto other people. If it's 4 out of 6, then that means that all you have to do is just be right there in the middle. If you tie with the 4 other people and then 2 people do not tie with you guys, then those 2 people get kicked out and then the other 4 people move forward.
But what happens if one of those 2 come above that lineup?
Then it still doesn't matter because, like, you guys still tied in those 4 people. If 4 people tie, then you guys are still going to stay there, and then you have to do another tiebreaker.
Right. Well, I brought up on the screen, we're going to just do an equity worksheet. I mean, you could do this with a formula, but I want to show how you would work this problem out. Now, these are the types of problems that you will encounter in DFS, obviously with a lot more variables than this, but just thinking in terms of equity. Okay, so the entry into this, the theoretical entry, I mean, technically, we're not paying this price, is $11,666.6666 or whatever, for a total of $70,000. The round 2 tickets are worth $15,500. If you come in 31st and 32nd place, you get paid $4,000 for your entry. Okay, so here's the payout structure. $15,500 for the top 4, $4,000 for each of the 2 spots underneath. Total of $70,000 in here, and your entry is $11,666. Now, if everyone played, and we're gonna, for all intents and purposes, the lineups are equal in probability. We'll come to that later. So if everyone played a different lineup, what you would do is divide the total prize pool by the places there are, and then that would be your equity. So if everyone had, if A, B, C, D, E, if we all had the same lineup, right? You could put it in here like 1, everyone had a different lineup like this. This was the configuration. What would each of our equity be? There's no rake in this contest, so it's $11,666. So if we all played different lineups, our EV would be neutral, assuming those lineups are equal to each other, right? Now, what happens if 2 of us play the same lineup? Okay, so there's 5 unique lineups, 4 people playing different lineups, and 2 duplicating. Okay, so now, without using a formula, I'm showing you how to think through this. What are the spots that this lineup, the 2 dupes, could occupy? Okay, first and second. So if you come in, if you're one of the 2 that come in first or second, you get $15,500. If you come in second and third, you get $15,500. If you come in third and fourth, you get $15,500. Now, what happens if you come in fourth and fifth? Well, you're going to split that $19,000, just like you do in DFS, $19,500. You add them together, divide it by 2. So the equity in that would be $97.50. Okay, and what happens if you come in 5th and 6th? For equity would be $4,000. Okay, so those are the 5 outcomes. So let's say that those are the 5 outcomes, and everything's all equal. You add up 15,500 plus 15,500 plus 15,500 plus 97.50 plus 4,000. Doing that right on my little calculator. 60,250. 60,250 divided by 5 is $12,050. So that would be, let me reduce the font so they all stay in the same line. There we go. Okay.
Hold on. Why are you doing this in a Word document and not a Google Sheet?
Because I don't know, easier to show on the screen.
Okay.
Right. Just easier.
Yeah.
Just if you were writing out by pen. I'm showing people that people get. I show stuff on Excel, and then people ask me, "Can I just get the Excel spreadsheet?" I'm like, "Dude, it's just addition and multiplication." Right? I mean, like you could make this in 3 minutes. I don't know why you can't, but people get all perturbed. That's why we're making these Excel tools as simple as they can. Okay, so if the equity in this lineup is $12,050, that's more than 11,666. By how much more? 12,050 minus 11,666 is $384. So this lineup is plus 384. So if this lineup that's duped twice is plus 384, that means the share of the equity of all these other 4 lineups has to equal minus $384 on the other end. So 384 divided by 4 is 96 bucks. So all these lineups have a negative equity. It would be 11,500 and whatever the hell dollars. So all these lineups would actually be negative EV as long as 2 people duplicate and all lineups are equal. Okay. Now what happens, James, if 3 people duplicate? Do you think this number goes up or down?
It's going to go down.
Oh, you think that the equity that the people with 3 dupes get less expected value or more?
No. You're sorry. I was looking at continue. Yeah, you're right.
So you think that if 3 people tie, right? If 3 people have the same lineup, that you get even more. Yes. So let's go through that. Okay, if you have the same lineup as 2 other people, there are only what 1, 2, 3, 4 outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
You either all come in first through third, which is 15,500, second through fourth, which is 15,500. Now, if you come in third, fourth, and fifth, that's 31. That's 35,000 divided by 3 is 11,666 and whatever in the change. And then let's say you come in fourth, fifth, and sixth, right? That's the other outcome. Third, fourth, and fifth, fourth, fifth, and sixth. So that's 23,500 divided by 3, and that's 7833, whatever. Okay. Now you add these all up: 31,000 plus 11,666 plus 7833. That's 50,500. 50,500 divided by 4. 12,625. 12,625, which gives you 12,625 minus your 11,666. That's $959. Then the other 3 would split 959 divided by 3. That's 319.66 or whatever. Right? So here's negative equity, $319 less. Okay? So if 2 people dupe, the dupe equity makes the other lineups negative. And the more you get duplicated, if you go up to 4, you go up to 5, it gets worse and worse for you based on this payout structure of paying the top 4 out of 6 like this. And Daniel Hutchins in the chat says, this is delightfully perverse. I wonder if it's the case that anytime the top payout goes to more than half the field, this result holds for lineups with equal projection. That's what I'm kind of showing here, right? So knowing this, now we could do the next one with 4 duplicates or 5 duplicates, but in a payout structure where more than half of the line, where more than half of the payouts are equal to the top, you actually gain by duplication in your equity. Okay? So going into this slate, James, there were 3 lineups that I found that were virtually equal to each other as far as projection and win probability. like win, like the fighter's winning the fight type of probability. And I had to choose between the three. That was my original choice of which one of these three lineups should I play. When you're doing that, when I was looking at all three, you know what the only thing that I was thinking about?
Which one's going to be duped?
Yeah, that's it. That's all. I didn't care which one I thought was better, quote unquote. They're all so close. They're all so close, projection wise, win probability wise, everything. I just like which one. Which one is more people going to have? Now that question was solved for me when 4 hours before lock, the Donald Cerrone and Joe Lozon fight got canceled.
Mm-hmm.
And out of those three lineups, Donald Cerrone at 8,300 was in two of them. So once I take out those two lineups, I'm only left with one.
Yeah.
So there's one lineup that projects win probability and median projection, everything above others. I mean, not significantly above others, but enough so that that's probably the lineup that you should be playing in cash games. And it was the most popular lineup in double ups across the site and everything. 4 people. I mean, it was 4 people duped. So it was me and 3 other people, and then one person played what was the median optimal of an aggregated projection.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just went and you didn't care about win probability and you just cared about median outcome, this lineup projected for like almost maybe barely a point over the lineup that the 4 of us played, but the win probability was lower. And that's what Adam Ship My Money played. There was another guy that played a lineup that probably shouldn't have played, that didn't stack the main event. So played for 6 winners, which is more of a GPP lineup, right? Everyone else stacked the main event. Fortunately for them, they both got through. So now there's 4 people left for a second tiebreaker where the top 2 out of 4.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So now going into this slate, let's do the brain exercise. Top 2 of 4, which is essentially is a 50-50. There's no rake, there's nothing like that. Let's say we get into a situation where like there's 2 or 3 lineups that are very close to each other, nearly equal. Should I care about the duplication?
At this point, yes.
Why would you say that?
I think I'm trying to work through the math.
You're trying to work through it.
Yeah, because I wrote down all this math like for myself too. So first,
let's say I'm gonna on the screen. I'm gonna change the contest. I'm gonna put it to what it is coming up.
Yeah.
This week. Okay.
So first and second get
15,500.
Yeah.
Third and fourth get 4,000. 4,000. It's still the same entry fee, 11,666, and 39,000 is the total. 15,000, yeah, 39,000 total. Right, 39,000 divided by 4 is 97. So entry, hold on. 31,000, 30. Oh yeah, because it's 97.50. Okay, there we go. Entry is 97.50. Right, because we're not paying 4 out of 6, we're paying 3. Okay, now I got it. Okay, so entry is 97.50, 39,000 total. So if we do this again, obviously, if we all play different lineups, and our equity is just 97.50. I mean, just assuming all the lineups are equal to each other. Okay. So now what happens if 2 of us play the same lineup? What happens?
So if 2 of you play the same lineup, then you can place first or second. So you've got 15.5 there.
That's 15.5, right?
You can place second or third. So now you're at 97.50.
Right.
Or you can place third or fourth, which is 4,000.
Right. Okay. So when you add them up, 15.5 plus 97.50 plus 4,000, That's 29,250.
Mm-hmm.
29,250 divided by 3 is 97.50. Is the same amount of equity as if the other two lineups would also have 97.50. So if you dupe with another person, your equity doesn't change at all. Now, what happens if it's now 3 and 1? You're going to do one of two things: come in first, second, or third together, which will end up in another tiebreaker, right? Or come in second, third, and fourth, which will end up in another tiebreaker. But still, the equity, if we do this, I'll just show it on the screen instead of doing it by telling you what it is. So if we do 1,500 plus 15, 31, 35,000 divided by 3 is 11,666. And if we come in second, third, and fourth, that's 23,500 divided by 3 is 78.33. Okay, those are the two outcomes, and the average of those two outcomes is 97.50. Means the other lineup's equity is 97.50 also. And there may be some smart people, some smart Alex in the chat that may go, well, what happens if two of us dupe and the other two dupe? Well, that's the same as just playing a head-to-head, right? That's the same as, right? Two of us either get through and two of us don't, because one lineup's going to come above the other, and it's going to end up being 97.50 also.
Mm-hmm.
So in the case of this coming tiebreaker, based on what we just worked out, which will apply to any payout structure like this, in a 50-50 scenario, doesn't matter as far as your equity is concerned when it comes to duplication.
Technically, no.
Well, why do you say technically?
Because you're not actually gaining any EV, right? You're not gaining any equity. Your ticket is still worth what you entered into. So you're not gaining EV, but you're not losing EV by doing it.
Right. So let's say I the same situation comes up. I find 3 lineups that are like dead even with each other. I shouldn't do like I did last time and go, well, which one's going to be the most duped? Mm-hmm. Like it's neutral. So when the EV difference is neutral, I shouldn't even consider that variable.
Right.
So duplication will not matter at all.
I mean, no, not for this next one. Not if you're trying to maximize EV.
Right. Now, put into more realistic terms, what happens if I tell you, James, that in this that there are there's one lineup that out of, like, let's say that there are a couple of lineups to choose from. One lineup is significantly better than the other 3 lineups. Should I play in this contest that lineup regardless of duplication? Or, I mean, we already answered this question. Like, is there a penalty for playing a lower projected lineup?
Yes.
Yes. For this contest.
Yeah, for this contest.
Right. Is there a penalty for playing in the original, the 4 out of 6 that we showed? Is there a penalty for playing a lower projected lineup?
Not if it's more duped.
So let me ask you a question then. In the first example, where the more duped the lineup is, the more equity you gain. But remember, we said, given that all things being equal, that you have a choice of playing whatever amount of lineups, and each lineup has the same win probability, same projection. So in the example we had when 2 people duped, in that 6-player example, right, we had before, which I can't go back to because I didn't save. Remember, in that example, this dupe lineup gained like $396 or something like that. Yeah. And these were all like minus 96 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens if that dupe lineup is like 3 points lower projected than all these individual lineups?
Who cares?
No, I have to care, because these calculations of equity all are dependent that all lineups are equal.
Sure. I see what you mean.
So let's say this lineup, these individual lineups, let's just say, have a 55% chance of beating this lineup, right? And this is 45% chance. Okay? Now, the equity can't just be 396, 96, 96, 96 like that. Obviously, this duplicated lineup doesn't have $396 extra of equity. It may have less because it only beats out this other lineup 45% of the time. So the duplication factor, right, the amount of equity you're gaining from the duplication has to be still positive compared to the actual probability and projection of the lineups. Are you doing some calculations?
I'm working through the spreadsheet on my own screen as well, so that like we can.
Maybe you could share your screen. We could do that on StreamYard.
No, it's okay. You've got it. You've got it.
Right. So let's say, James, on your end, what would the win probability difference be for that duplicated lineup at plus 396 or whatever? Be where the equity would turn to 0 even with the duplication.
I'm not sure.
42%, 43%.
It seems like 40. Is it 40% equal? Hold on. You go ahead and do it.
Okay, well, I'm not doing anything in Excel or anything. I would be doing this. I'm not going to show it by hand.
Yeah, I get you.
Right, because now we're going to add this. This is what you would do in Excel more than do it on just a Google Doc just to show it. But the point that I'm making is that as the duplication goes up, because remember we saw before that if it was 4 dupes and 5 dupes, you gained even more equity. But let's say you knew going into that 4 out of 6 contest that 5 people were going to dupe. And they were going to dupe with a lineup that projects for much lower than a lineup that you believe is optimal.
Mm-hmm.
And you believe your lineup beats that other lineup. I'm using an exaggeration. Okay? Let's say you believe that your lineup beats that other lineup 90% of the time. But that lineup's going to be duped 5 times. Obviously, your lineup, even though the others are duped 5 times, is way better. Right? So even though if everything was equal, you'd end up negative EV because the other 5 are duped. But because your lineup is 90% chance to win rather than 50% chance to win, it's actually the 5 dupes that have the negative equity.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because they have much less likelihood of beating that single lineup, and they're tied with everyone. So that balance has to be there. This is what we talk about in DFS, James, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We talk about for sports like a Showdown, for instance. Let's go to, because some people may not play MMA. So in NFL Showdown, you could play a unique lineup, right, of all $100 players. You're unique. You're not duped, right? But your win probability is so low. Your projection is so low that it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter whatsoever that, okay, great, you have a unique lineup that scores 8 points. Because none of these players are backup quarterbacks, right? Whatever the hell. 5th tight ends, 7th wide receivers. Like, your shot at actually winning first place is virtually 0, even though it is a unique lineup. Yet you could find a lineup that is duped 3 times that has more equity than that unique lineup because although it's duped 3 times, it wins, way more than it should. So when it wins first place, yeah, you're not getting $100,000. You're not getting whatever, $500,000 by yourself. But you're getting $170,000 splitting 3 ways or $35,000 splitting 3 ways for the percentage of the time that it comes up. Nothing to add.
No, dude, you're owning it. I could also add in that. No, I mean, what do you want me to add to that?
I don't know. Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if there's anything to add to it, but I'm showing, even though we were using a cash game example of thinking in terms of how duplication affects the equity you have in contests. Okay, that could be a positive, it could be a negative. We've talked a lot about showdown contests, MMA contests, small field golf contests, 2-game MLB slates, where in GPP structures, progressively paid out, duplication is a negative typically. It is a negative factor towards the equity and expected value of your lineups. But in cash games, it actually is a positive. It actually ends up being a positive variable, assuming that the projection of your lineups are still good, right? So in order to overcome in cash games heavy duplication by your opponents, what variable do you have to make up in order to rectify that if you're not going to duplicate?
That win equity.
Right, win equity, right, win projection, right? You could look, and I could look around for tonight's baseball slate for whatever reason. You're playing a 23-man double up, right? You're playing a 50-50. Let's just say 50-50. It makes it easier. A 20-man 50-50. And you know that 6-7 people are going to have this same lineup, the bat optimal, whatever you want to call it, or the aggregated whatever. So from some site, right? Some high projected lineup. Now, if those projections are off, if you think, oh, I could play a lineup that's 3 points higher projected, right? Whether or not you play that lineup is directly related to the amount of duplication of that other lineup. So as that lineup gets more and more duplicated, right, the more and more projection you need to have in order for it to be worth playing a different lineup. So if, let's say, out of a 20-man 50-50, a 20-man double up, whatever, cash game, anything, triple up, it doesn't matter. Something where it's not a progressive payout structure, where first, middle doesn't matter. If a lineup is going to be duplicated twice, if you have 19 opponents and 2 people are going to duplicate, that affects your equity, but very marginally, right? If their lineup is lower projected, it actually benefits you. But if their lineup is the highest projected, if you can't possibly make a higher projected, higher win probability lineup, that does affect you, even if 2 people do by a little. And as it goes to 3, to 4, to 5, to 6, it affects you negatively more and more and more. In order to make up, by not either your choice is to play that lineup or find a lineup that is more and more higher projected than that lineup, hoping that obviously those people are wrong, or it's groupthink and everyone's playing the same. Who knows? It happens in basketball a lot, right? Everyone's playing this stud instead of that stud, even though the difference in projection is like 1 minute. It's like if everyone else is wrong by 1 minute, your lineup actually projects for slightly higher, right? But let's say in that 20-person double, let's say you have that exact situation. It's NBA, and you're playing a 50-50. And obviously there's like 3 value plays on the slate that are just no-brainers, that you're obviously plugging in, right? Some injury happens. And you're down to do you play LeBron or Giannis, something like that. And they're both projected within like a half a point of each other. But it's all based on like 1 or 2 minutes of basketball. If you believe that one player should have 1 extra minute, and that if the other lineup is going to be duplicated only like 3 or 4 times, you probably should play what you believe is the better lineup. That extra 2 points probably makes up for 2, 3, 4 people duplicating, 5 people duplicating. If you're up to like 8 points of duplication, 8, 7, 8, 9, it's probably better, even if you think that the minutes are off by a minute or 2, to play the duplicated lineup at that point. Because even if you're right, your projection only goes up by like 2 points, and that increased 2-point projection is in win equity isn't worth the duplication is taking your equity out.
Yeah, it's cool exercise. That's really interesting. It goes back to me literally trying to be duped in head-to-heads. Daniel Hutchins did say in the chat, In real raked head-to-head games, it behooves you to pick a highly duplicated lineup so that when you face other sharp players, you're more likely to get the rake refunded. And while I think that, because we talked about that, it was either last week or 2 weeks ago, where if you're playing in higher dollar head-to-heads and you're up against sharp players, that strategy maybe works like twice, and then they're going to figure out kind of what you're doing. And then they're going to employ what you just talked about, Jordan, where they're going to play a lineup that is different so that they know, because they know that you're just going to play like the highest owned lineups, and they'll play something that beats you out by some amount of projection. So their win equity is then higher. But in general, yeah, if you're playing head to heads, or if you're playing something where it's not a progressive payout, and even if it is a progressive, eventually, like duplicated lineups sometimes have more equity. Yeah, you should be aiming for the duplications, I think.
Right. Daniel's in the chat doing the calculation. Which
yeah, he's gone through all the math there.
Right. 6-man 4-out payout case basically says if 5 players dupe, that you'll need a 55.5% chance to beat that lineup in order to want to not dupe that lineup.
Mm-hmm.
Which for most sports, you're not gonna find one. If everyone's playing, if 5 people are playing that lineup, it's most likely but not going to be so underprojected compared to a better. It's most likely going to be the best median lineup. If 5 people are duplicating, there has to be a reason for that, right? Typically, that you're going to need a 55 right. So it almost becomes the fact that you're not going to find a lineup that's better than that.
Mm-hmm.
But think of the reverse in GPPs. Because I know a lot of people may be listening, watching. They're like, well, I don't play cash games, bubble ups. Like, how does this apply to me? Well, think of the inverse. The inverse, maybe not the reverse, the inverse. The contrapositive. No, it's not. But the inverse for GPPs. That the more and more your opponents dupe, the less and less chance that you need to beat them. So, like, it would be the other end of the spectrum. Let's say, same contest, winner take all. Okay? So it's first place or nothing. And 5 people were going to dupe. You would only need a what? 45% chance of beating that lineup to be profitable. Like if you could find a lineup that has a 40, which you could find in NBA or in most sports, you could find plenty of those, right? Because if everyone's playing like the top projected lineup, the next couple of lineups are like, it's the different, instead of it being 50-50, it's like 51-49. The next 5 lineups are like 51.5, 48.5. Then the next one is like 52-48. Then the next one's like 52.5, 57, 47.5. Like you could, like just a couple of lineups underneath the optimal, it's still less than 50. It's still more than 45% chance. So like if you were playing a 6-man contest, like we were just talking about, and only the top 1 paid, and 5 people you knew were going to dupe, it would be so easy. And especially if you knew exactly what that dupe lineup is, just play the second highest projected lineup and you profit. Like it's an automatic profit at that point, as long as the payout structure is more than half and you get paid more for first place, right? Which is essentially what a GPP is. So you can see just in concept, because we're showing with this cash game, we're showing the inverse of this. So if the inverse is correct, that means that the opposite is also correct. So the more and more your opponents dupe in a 6-man winner take all, the more and more likely you should play a lineup that projects lower that isn't duplicated.
Yep.
Obviously, you don't want to play a lineup that projects 7 million points lower, but obviously when it comes to median lineups, you could find, I mean, look, a baseball slate tonight, you could play any of the top 50 lineups and be virtually equal, 51-49 with any of the other lineups. Right? They're not that dramatic differences. So if you knew you were playing a let's say a 5-man, like we see the 5-man lobby, right? In Draftkings, it pays out the top 2, right? It pays out first more than second, right? Second is typically double your money, and first is like 4 times your money, right? Or 3 times your money. So in those types of contests, you want people to duplicate. You want like duplication helps you. If you're in a 5-man and 2 people have the same lineup, the people that are not dupe benefit, as long as their projection is not dramatically lower, which in cash games for MLB or NBA will happen. MMA is a little bit different because there's only so many ways you could go. So to get to even move to the next point, duplication hurts you in progressively payout contests. So the smaller the contest, the more that it hurts you. Right? If you're playing a 30,000 field GPP and you get duped once, it doesn't hurt you. I mean, it still hurts you, but it doesn't hurt you as much as playing a 3-man winner take all and one guy duping you. Essentially, if you get duped in a 3-man, the person with the unique lineup is the only one that has positive EV in the contest. And you could see how if you had 2 accounts and you knew what one person was going to play, that automatically duping the other person makes you money. So that's the 3-man and 5-man collusion stories in the high stakes that you may hear about. It uses this concept directly of if you were colluding in a 3-man, basically 2 people would go, you and your friend and your collusion friend would go in, wait for a third person. You see who the third person is and know what lineup they're going to play. If you have a very good shot at knowing what their lineup is going to be, it's going to be some aggregate optimal. Like it's NBA. It's a very straightforward lineup, right? Type of thing. They're more likely to just play that. What you would do is you would play that lineup. You would go, I want to play that lineup. And then you tell your friend to play the second highest optimal, right? And as long as one of you duped, one of the 2 of you dupe against the third guy, you both of you show a profit, right? So this concept that I'm showing is not just for cash games, not just for GPPs. This is thinking mathematically about equity in a contest, no matter what types of contests that you're playing. So, James, are we going to be playing 3-mans together?
I think that if I were to answer that on a recorded line, that would probably be a pretty bad idea for the equity here.
Now, in order to do that and not get caught or whatever like that, probably is only worth it to do in the high stakes.
Well, yeah, I mean, or you can get caught and nobody cares.
Right, or that's also true. You could also get caught and no one cares. Also, in order to make profit like that overall, it's a long period.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the type of thing. It's like it's negative EV for the other lineup, but to realize that equity, like you have to churn out a lot of money.
Yeah, you got to be running those 3-mans. Not that this is happening at all, but I mean, you would have to be in basically every single 3-man for every single main sport in the high stakes. And again, not that this is happening, but it would probably take a couple of years of it happening to really show a profit if this was happening.
Right. Daniel in chat says, I suspect that in very small, under 25-man GPPs at high stakes I've played, the bulk of my EV comes from others duping.
Absolutely.
And that would be absolutely correct. That when I talk about on the Theory of DFS podcast, and we talk about the difference between large field GPPs and small field single entry stuff, is that the propensity of a lot of higher stakes players, especially the cash game players, that are just throwing one lineup into everything, where they're playing a $555 single entry or $1,000 single entry, but they're playing like $50,000 worth of volume. So they're just throwing because they're playing $10,000 head-to-heads or whatever like that. That they're playing a quote cash lineup. So in like a 20-man $1,000 single entry GPP, like they're just throwing in their cash lineup, and it's quite possible it's quite possible in that contest, 3 people have a dupe, another person has a dupe with someone else. Like there's multiple dupes. Like it's not just one. It could, some slates maybe 7 people have the same lineup. But a lot of times it's 3 people have the same lineup, then another 3 people have a different same lineup, and then 2 other people are duped, and then the rest are solo. Like in a 20-25 man contest, like if you're as long as your projection is not ridiculously low, like your equity just goes. You don't even have to do anything for your equity to just go straight up, just from the sake of multiple people duplicating in a progressive payout structure tournament, even at 20 people, because that it affects it more. Because in a 20-person contest, if everything's being equal, everyone has 5% equity in that contest. So for you to dupe, you're duping. It's very similar. If you had 5% equity in a, let's just say, a 10,000 person contest, 10,000 entry contest, like a large field GP, let's just say 30,000. A lot of them are 30,000. If you had 5% equity in a 30,000 entry contest, that means you had 1,500 lineups. Okay? So for 2 of those lineups in a 20-man GPP to dupe, that's 10% of the total equity in the contest, right? Because it's 2 lineups duped. In a 30,000 person contest, that's like 3,000 lineups all being equal. Like having a dupe train of 3,000 is similar. We don't get dupe trains of 3,000 in large field GPPs. Even in NBA Showdown, you don't see 3,000 way dupes. You may see 300. You may even see 1,000 way dupe, but you don't see a 3,000 way dupe. So duping in a 20-man GPP is the equivalent of being on a 3,000 person lineup train for like an NFL Showdown contest,
which is hilarious,
right? Which put things in. I'm just showing to put things into perspective. It's like, oh, what's the big deal in a 20-man contest if I dupe, right? Well, we had a case, James, in this past slate that in the 555. It's a 300-man contest, and the winner duped twice. So it was a 3-way tie for first. Okay, so let's put things into perspective. What's 3 out of 300?
It is 1%.
1%. Okay, so 1% of the lineups were duped. Okay, so let's just put it into some pragmatic perspective. In a NFL Showdown contest of 100,000 players, entries, if 1% of the lineups were duped, how many lineups is that?
1,000.
Right. So the playing a 3-way dupe in the 555 and 300 people is the same
in terms of equity.
In terms of equity, right? As playing the same lineup as 999 other people in an NFL Showdown contest with 100,000 entries in it. So if you look at that and go, if I asked you for an NFL Showdown contest, James, I got a lineup for you. It's great, right? The only problem is it's going to be duped 1,000 times. You'd look at me, James, and you'd think I'm nuts, right?
I mean, I would, yeah.
Right. Pragmatically.
Yeah.
Right. You'd go, why the hell would I play a line? It's like you don't even mind. You'd be like, I don't mind a lineup that's duped 50 ways, which is still, to me, you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
But definitely not 1,000. So in a 300-person contest, playing a lineup that is duped 3 ways is just, from an EV perspective, as negative EV is doing that. So in a 300-person contest, let's say you're duped twice. Let's say in a 300-person contest, you're duped with one other person. Okay? So how much equity is that? What, 0.75?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so that's still equivalent of being duped 750 times in that NFL Showdown contest. Right?
It's 6-6.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Okay?
So yeah, it's 667 entries.
Right.
Duped in the 100,000.
So basically, if you're playing like essentially what I'm kind of bringing the point to is that if you're playing like a contest that has like 500 or less entries into it, like in the high stakes or whatever, you're playing the 777 walk-off baseball, whatever contest, that duping is even worse for you than in large than what we're even talking about for like showdown contests. Like, so if you can't get unique in that small of a field, like that is contributing to more of your negative EV than possibly the projection, leverage, or correlation of like all those 3 levers that we talk about. We have this little maybe it's the duplication clutch right on the side of the vehicle, right? Right, it's the clutch. I never do manual. I've never driven manual transmission, but it's not one of the main levers. But it's kind of like this little thing here. That duplication clutch lever, that little clutch. Like it turns out that that means a lot more. Like in the smallest, like I'm kind of beating the same point over that if you're gonna be playing like, oh, let me throw this lineup into the 121 single entry in MLB. And I think this is one of the main reasons why the 121 single entry MLB contest is, I believe, the softest contest on the site, is for two reasons. One, ownership condenses way too much. And the combinatorial duplication. So let's say two lineups. Okay, you have duplication in that contest as it is. Here's this lineup is duped 4 times. This lineup is duped 6 times. This lineup is duped twice. But also, even if out of those the lineups that are duped 6 times, there's like 6 other lineups that are like a 1v1 of that lineup also. So like there's 9 players in there that are also duped, right? You get all this duplication going on, combinatorially at least, in addition to full lineups, that I believe that that duplication alone makes up for the rake. I think Daniel would agree with me on
that. I wish that the 121 was 10K to first every single time, because I do agree that it's like just that. I think that one and the only contests that I'll play for MLB at this point are the 88, the 121, and the 250. Because like I think those 3 contests specifically for MLB are just like significantly better. The 121, when it is 10K to first and 250 min cash, is like
that's a perfect contest to me.
You're not going to find anything better than that,
right?
And that's what I always tell people. And it's unfortunate because like that contest is just the nuts, and then people who don't have the bankroll for it is like you're relegated to like the $4.20 max, where you're getting like 38 cents for a min cash, and like the top prize is 2K, and it's unfortunate. But yeah, the 121, that's a really good contest. And outside of the dupes and the combinatorics, like you were talking about, like on top of that, you also have another subset that is larger than that of people who are like stacking the same team. So even if it's not just one person off, there's another like add 10 more people onto this train, and eventually you end up with, I don't know, 60, 70 people who are all stacking the same team. And that team, we know if they all have equity in that team and that team fails, it's all of their lineups are shot. And it doesn't even matter if it was the same lineup, because it's the same team duped. So I think that it's one of the reasons why baseball is my favorite sport for DFS and for GPPs period, is because of that. It's almost like stacking an NFL on steroids, where you give so much of your equity to one team to end up performing that if that team does not do well, you're just shot.
Yeah, Daniel says he could confirm that the 121 is very, very soft in his post hoc sims.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. And then Mike Gray says Yahoo's filled with the bad optos in 50 and 100 mans. Well, I mean, if they're cash games, if they're 50-50s, if they're double ups, then you'd want to have the same lineup. I mean, are you going to I mean, once you get to the point where like most of the field is playing the same lineup, you're not going to beat the rake anymore. But as long as there's enough people that don't play it, you'd rather be part of the train in those format contests. But in the 50 and 100 mans, if they're like the 100 mans that pay out the top 12 and pay out first, if it's a progressively payout structure contest, you want to see that.
Yeah, there's massive equity in fading that.
You're right. You'd essentially, if you're playing, let's say on FanDuel, because they run the 100 mans on FanDuel, and I think the 100 mans on FanDuel are the softest contests, probably in all of DFS, I think. The 100 mans that pay out to top 12. I'm not talking about the 100 man 50-50s. The 100 mans that pay out the top 12, because a lot of people play cash lineups into that. Either they play cash lineups or they play really bad lineups. I mean, sometimes you see really, really bad lineups. What I would suggest you do is play play the $1, whatever, 100-man top 12 on FanDuel, and make sure you stack, because a lot of people may not even be playing stack lineups into that. And then find out what the most duplicated lineups are. Like you could subscribe to RotoGrinders Premium, right? Click on that link in the description, get $10 off your first month, and run the optimal projections. Run at 6:30, half an hour before the lock. If you have subscriptions elsewhere, if you have projections from elsewhere, all you have to do is just run the bat. What's the optimal for the bat? What's the optimal for this site? What's the aggregate of these? See what players come up in all of them, right? Just come up in all of them, and then X out that player, and then build a different line. Like literally X out the player, and then build whatever optimal you want based on that. And maybe you end up with like a 4v4 off of many duplicated lineups, and then all you have to do is do that and hope everyone else dupes combinatorically enough that over time. I may actually do that. Do you think that's a good experiment? I'm thinking of something that I could do that doesn't take much time for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good experiment. I think it'll be something people will enjoy seeing for sure.
Right. So I'll have to look. Because it has to be FanDuel, because it can't be DraftKings, because I can't play that low stakes on DraftKings. So maybe I do that. Maybe on FanDuel, I will try to get in as many of the non-guaranteed 150 and 100 mans. And I think Alex Santi is saying the same thing. That's what he does. And do that. And see, basically, because I know what the projections are around the entire industry, basically just run the optimals, see what the most duplicated optimals are. And I'll just X out, if there's 4 lineups that all have the same guy in it, X out that guy and then run it and see what my projection drop is, right? Because we talked about before, you'd want to be on the duplication matter. If the next projected lineup is 7 points lower, then probably you should have that guy in your lineup. Because like in NBA, the guy that's going to be in all the lineups is the 4K guy that projects for 7 million points. You're probably not Xing that guy out, right? Because then your projection goes down too much. But seeing, okay, if I X this guy out and then play a different lineup, I should be able to make money long term. I would have to do this starting today and then do it for the rest of the baseball season. That it should be profitable. I should have to set it. This is very similar to the NBA experiment that I did for a season. A season and a half, the year before, where I'm just I just didn't think, and I just played the top optimal on both sites just blindly, and then made $20,000 doing that, right? With good contest selection. With this, I don't even need to do any contest selection. It's I know exactly the contests that I'm playing, right? The low stakes 100-man top 12 or the 50-man, whatever. The low stakes, non-guaranteed progressive payout stuff. And let's see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's, obviously there's a lot of people that are making mistakes in those 100-mans because that's a lot of beginners. But yeah, it's I think you're gonna end up making money on it. And the nice thing about that, like you just said, there's no contest selection. You can literally, we talk a lot about the time invested into DFS and how much money you're making per hour. We've done those exercises before on this show, where if you're taking more than about 10 minutes to build a lineup for cash games, most of the time you're only making $11 an hour. And do you really want to be doing that? So with this, you could feasibly end up making a lineup in 3 minutes or something after you reg all your contests. So ROI on that and your return on an hourly investment is probably going to be upwards of how much action can you get down on that?
I don't know. That's what I'm gonna have to find out.
Yeah, if you can get a good $1,000 down or something that.
No, I know it's not. No, it's not gonna be that much. No.
Okay, I don't play on FanDuel, so I don't know what the total.
Is this worth? The thing is that the time investment matters. If I'm only going to be playing baseball, let's say, like I said before, I think I'm just going to be playing on DraftKings the 121 and 3 entries into the 88 or something like that, where I'm not spending time to build 150 lineups. So I could do that fairly quickly. That on FanDuel, essentially, if I'm doing those 100-man GPPs, I'm essentially playing a cash with flair type lineup.
Yeah.
And all I'm doing is trying to exploit the field on duplication.
And there are a lot of pros that I have noticed doing that as well in most single entries. There's like Empire Maker. That's what he does. All he does is just play his best cash lineup, his best projected lineup, and all the single entry stuff because it's just going to exploit the field. He does it for NFL, so it makes sense to do it on FanDuel and 100.
Right, because the key to this from a time perspective is I don't want to have to think.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna have to think a little. It's not gonna be like automatic type of thing, but I could run the optimals from multiple sites, and then at 10 minutes before lock, go, well, okay, let me see if I X this guy out, what does my lineup look like? And if it's more than a 3v3, I just play that lineup. Right? And if that's all my thinking goes into it, and it gives me enough difference with all the duplication, I should be profitable past the rate.
And I think you will be.
Okay, well, I'm going to try it out. I'll start today. Right? It gives me something to do on FanDuel. Right? It gives me something. So now all I need to do, like Alex says in the chat, is I need to every hour start entering contests. Because that's to me that's the time suck of got to wait for new ones to spawn and then enter those and go throughout the day. Very similar to playing cash games or whatever. But no, it's definitely, James, a better experiment than playing Madden Sims.
Hey, to be fair, actually, I have one sub who has been absolutely terrific in the Madden Sims since I built this. He did the experiment that you and I wanted to do, but you got bored super quick and I got busy really quick. But he has been using them, and I was actually going to stop the Madden Sims projection on the site so that I could start working on the NFL off-season stuff. And he was like, "No, you can't do that. I make too much money doing this, and you need to keep running Madden Sims." I'm like, okay, well, it only takes me 7 minutes to make them in the morning anyway. So for you, I will continue to do it. But it's been profitable. He's been really good, and maybe it's just because Bills fan can't play anymore. But
that must definitely help though.
It absolutely helps him because it removed one of the absolute regs. There's 6 guys that play every
but Bills fan was Bills fan was the highest volume Madden Sims player there was. And Emil Heskey.
There's 4 people. There was Bills fan, there's Emil Heskey, and then there's at least 2 other people that are in every single contest and every single head-to-head. There's at least 4 of them that play every single one and have maximum action on it. So, and it's not hard to do, right? It's $600 a day or something like that. You don't have to be a high roller to do it. But there's people that, and it's beatable. It's beatable. But regardless, this will be more profitable.
So if you enjoyed the conversation, right, about this, we're talking about game theory. This is the game theory of daily fantasy sports, right? It applies to all sports. We talked about multiple sports when it comes to this, right? It's math. This all it is math, and it's not that complicated math. Look, I did it on a Google Doc, right? Just let's just think it through. Think of the combinations. Think of okay, right? And you can do this in Excel. You can make more complicated stuff in Excel for different, but bigger payout structures and whatever like that. But it's this isn't complicated. So if you want more of this type of discussion, how to think like a professional DFS player, Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. It's a 15-hour audio masterclass with me and James, right? So you hear me and James, we explain everything to you. So you get a nice structured seminar-based education of all of these concepts. And I can't see how you don't get better at DFS from listening to this at least once. Most people tell me they listen to it once a month just to reiterate concepts, which is exactly how we formatted it, because that's how I learned how to play poker. So go to theoryofdfs.com and pick it up. James, you're at paydirt_DFS.
I am at paydirt_DFS. I have been doing a whole bunch of work on the side. I actually added some free stuff. So I added some research tables for baseball for people who just want some research stuff. So yeah, I've been doing a bunch of work on that. And like I said, I should have the NFL off-season stuff, which is a whole bunch of rankings and projections and everything like that ready by the end of this month. So yeah, lots of cool stuff happening over there. And
you can find me on Twitter at BlenderHD, and hit that subscribe button. hit the thumbs ups on your way out the door. Give me those thummy thumbs. And later today, we got Grinders Live. Doug will be going over the 8-game MLB slate. Roth will be on crunch time to talk about the weather. I'm not sure if there is any. Seems like the entire country is on a heat wave. So tune in then. Live locks with Grant. That's on the Scores and Odds channel. And I'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll be talking about what happened tonight's MLB slate. Maybe I'll go through what I did for the on FanDuel. If I'm going to do that tonight, maybe go through a little bit of that tomorrow and answer your DFS strategy questions like I always do on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.